Hello, everyone. We'll just take one more minute just before we get started. We're still having colleagues come into the room virtually, so to speak. So we'll start in 1 minute. Thanks so much. welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I think we'll fade out the music. Excellent. Hi, hello everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Gina Lucarelli, and I'm the team leader for the United Nations Development Program Accelerator Labs Network. So welcome to our virtual event today, where we'll discuss the fast and the curious, local innovations to accelerate progress towards the 2030 agenda in the times of COVID-19. Some of you might remember, and some of you might have even joined us in person last year in New York, almost a year to the date, when we gathered at the margins of the 2019 high-level political forum to launch this UNDP Accelerator Lab network. The UNDP Accelerator Labs are an experiment at scale to create the world's largest learning network on sustainable development challenges. So when we say fast and curious, we're talking about UNDP and its partners in the national innovation ecosystems around the world. They're fast because they manage agilely and they pivot to new realities, and they're curious as they map solutions, explore new horizons, and are constantly on a quest to find out what works in sustainable development. The UNDP Accelerator Lab Network is co-built as a joint venture with the Federal Ministry of Economic Cooperation and Development of Germany and the Qatar Fund for Development. Many thanks to our host today, the Qatar Fund for Development. So we're gathered here digitally today due to the pandemic. And while we can't see you, we're very keen to hear from you. We know there are many innovators out there participating in this call, so we really want to make this an open conversation, both today and on into the future. For today, please use the Q&A button on your screen to ask questions, which we will address after the panel discussion. So we've got a great lineup of speakers today, and we'll be hearing from our founding investors and the UNDP administrator very shortly. Before we do, let's kick this off with an animated video about the UNDP Accelerator Labs.
The most exciting part of our project is that we designed it and we did the data collection just under 2 days.
Here in Ethiopia, we used foresight to understand how the newly developed industrial parks would be affected by the pandemic.
In the Philippines, we used messenger chatbots and other digital tools in tandem with community organizing to give the vulnerable a greater voice in the assessment of the socio-economic impacts of COVID-19.
Pain in Advance is a social media campaign from the Argentine Accelerator Lab. It encourages consumers to pay in advance goods and services so they can get them after the lockdown ends.
Fantastic. Love that video. It's got a great beat to it, and it's good for dancing in your chair at home. So there you have it. The world's largest network of labs is growing and looking for partners. We hope some of you out there are keen to join us. Check out acceleratorlabs.undp.org and join us. I'd like now to welcome our founding investors and UNDP administrator to deliver their opening remarks. A warm welcome first to Mr. Ali Abdullah De Bock, Deputy Director General for Planning at the Qatar Fund for Development, who will be speaking on behalf of His Excellency Khalifa bin Yassem Al Kuwadi, Director General of the Qatar Fund for Development. I'd also like to give a warm welcome to Her Excellency Maria Flaxbart, Parliamentary State Secretary to the Federal Minister for Economic Cooperation and Development of Germany. And finally, to His Excellency Achim Steiner, Administrator for the United Nations Development Program. Let us start with our host for today, the Qatar Fund for Development. Deputy Director De Bock, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thanks, moderator, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It gives us enormous pleasure to welcome you all today to this virtual conference on the Accelerator Lab Network, fast and curious local innovations to accelerate progress towards the 2030 agenda in times of COVID-19. I wish to extend my deep appreciation to the UNDP under the leadership of Mr. Achim Steiner, the UNDP administrator, for their relentless and unwavering dedication to achieve inclusive and sustainable human development and mainstream the Sustainable Development Goal as a solid foundation for the peace and prosperity. I thank the expert and resource person for accepting our invitation to share their knowledge and experience and ensure an outcome that grounded in supporting local actions and innovation in the achievement of Agenda 2030 for sustainable development in all goals in all countries. I warmly welcome all participants joining us today at this important event, government officials, partners, stakeholders, students, observers, and fellow colleagues from international development arena. Ladies and gentlemen, nearly a year ago to this date, Qatar Fund for Development was honored to join forces with UNDP and the Federal Republic of Germany to build the world's largest and fastest learning network around the development challenges. Accelerator Lab Network today, the lab are actively busy hubs creating actionable intelligence and testing solutions in 78 countries across the globe. This broad mobilization is a testament to the success of this vision. Q50 is very proud to be a core investor in this initiative. We strongly believe the more can be done, and our commitment to more collaboration action is stronger than ever. Today, we are faced with many pressing and unprecedented challenges and complexity: poverty, displacement, climate change, to name a few. COVID-19, for instance, has caused a global disruption to the health system, economies, and livelihood across the globe, with heavy implication projected on the implementation of the 2030 agenda. And while Q50, driven by its vision to give hope and promote peace through sustainable and inclusive development, is committed to leave no stone unturned in the quest to leave no one behind. We constantly ask ourselves what can be done to ensure the aid catalyzes development. How can we support system-wide transformation that address development challenges by communities for the communities. This said, simulation socially accepted and locally sourced solutions and innovative, disruptive approach that bring transformational changes in addressing urgent, humanitarian, and interrelated development challenges, build our resilient to future shocks, foster sustainable development, and contribute to realizing our commitment to achieve the 2030 agenda has become more important than ever. Destructive and disruptive, as it already says, COVID-19 has obliged the international community to shift their focus on containing the contingent. However, we must not lose the sight of the existing development challenges hindering realization of the SDGs. And hence, we urge you as a young innovators from Accelerator Lab to continue to address the development challenges weakening in fragile states, LDCs, SIDs, and other hampering progress towards the Agenda 2030. And while the innovation is often associated with technology, innovation, and creation, we firmly believe that within the development context, it may also be associated with a proven solution being adapted to a new context or improvement through finding and scaling solutions to problems. And partners built on effective coordination. The world is fast changing and the global development challenges are intensifying. In order to render a solution to these challenges more fit for the purpose, we need to strike the balance, respond faster, and to provide impactful solutions adapted to the communities needed. This is specifically the driver for the Accelerator Lab has proven to play their role to be fast and curious enough to accelerate action to realize the decade of action. And delivery of sustainable development. I thank you for the attention and wish you the most fruitful discussion tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Director De Bock. Your Excellency, State Secretary Flashback, the floor is yours. I believe you're on mute, State Secretary. If you don't mind just hitting the unmute.
Oh, yeah, it's much better now. So, Gina, thank you very much again.
The floor is yours.
Excellencies, Akim Steiner, Ali Abdullah Al De Bock, ladies and gentlemen. Gina, you just have mentioned it was a great event last year in New York. But today, time is running against us. And now we need to stop the regression in the development countries due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Years of progress are being eradicated. People are losing their livelihoods. Children are not in school. Food insecurity is on the rise. And the transformation towards a sustainable development path is on hold. And at the same time, we have only 10 short years to realize the Agenda 2030. Before the crisis, projections were already suggesting that we are likely to miss the mark by 2030 with business as usual. Today, business as usual seems to be very, very far away, and the crisis is unprecedented. But there are some beacons of hope. It is up to us to seize the global disruption as an opportunity to change the way we operate. We need a sustainable way, a new normal, not return to the past. For this, we need innovation. We need collaboration between diverse stakeholders. And we need out-of-the-box solutions that are applicable to scalable. That is what the Accelerator Labs stand for. And the network is up and running, available to help countries now, thanks to the foresight and timely action of UNDP and Administrator Akim Steiner. The Accelerator labs on the ground are already supporting responses to COVID-19 with important innovations, a virus tracking app in Cabo Verde, or crowdsourcing citizens' ideas on crisis response are promising examples of how the lab can change our approaches. I'm sure that the labs will continue to be a driving force for a sustainable recovery. Their work has never been more relevant than today. The German government is happy to support such an important initiative. We share the beliefs that solutions that exist at the margins are not marginal. At scale, they bear great potential for realizing the 2030 agenda. We are proud to be a resolute supporter of UNDP's work with a 50 million euro additional core contribution this year to support UNDP's COVID-19 response. Extending the network to more countries would be a welcome step. However, we have to make sure that the financial resources are not stretched too thin. Now, I'm very much looking forward to learning more about how the Accelerator Lab can help us to achieve our goals. So thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, State Secretary Flaxbart. And now I'd like to welcome the UN Development Program Administrator, Achim Steiner, to take the floor. Administrator Steiner, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Gina, to the Deputy Director of the Qatar Fund for Development, to Her Excellency Dr. Maria Flaxbart, to everybody online, a warm welcome also from me. These are extraordinary times, and in some ways they speak to precisely the motivation and strategic direction that the Accelerator Labs embarked on just over a year ago. Extraordinary times require extraordinary thinking. They also require us to reconceptualize how it is that the future of development can, one, tackle and help societies deal with the current crisis, but also to build forward better. And looking into the future, looking at the frontiers of possibilities, but also rethinking the approach of development cooperation by focusing on that which is creativity and energy and exploration inside countries and communities was very much the focus of establishing this network of UNDP's Accelerator Labs. Now, little did we know when we embarked on this that this would be put to the test so quickly in these extraordinary times. COVID-19 has turned everything on its head, and yet we still have 7.5 billion people. We have nations, we have communities that must both manage through the pandemic, deal with extraordinary disruption, and yet not lose sight that the way out of this crisis is a developmental perspective. It is choices, it is investments we make, it is the responses that are available to countries across the globe. I want to thank the Qatar Fund for Development for bringing us together today through this event. And I want to thank both the Qatar Fund and Germany's Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, BMZ, for having been very bold. When we looked for partners for what is truly an unusual experiment, we were looking for venture capital investors, so to speak, not partners who would simply want to fund the project with, planned outcomes and results, but actually something that would disrupt, first of all, our way of looking at development. Secondly, would enable UNDP also to evolve very quickly by having these accelerator labs attached to the country teams of UNDP, active in over 170 countries, and together begin to create the space where local solutions, ingenuity, new thinking, also drawing from the startup scene, from the private sector, from science, from technology, would create more space, more options, better choices to make. So here we are in the midst of a pandemic, and I just want to briefly share 3 lessons with you that we have observed in seeing how the Accelerator Labs, integral to the country teams in which they operate, have allowed us to learn very quickly what their value is beyond the original concept. The first lesson is the essential importance of agility and to be able to operate at scale. Not easy because, 3-person teams are not exactly an army, but they are embedded in a UN country team. and they are embedded in an ecosystem of innovation and development institutions and thinking in their countries. And above all, they managed to attract an extraordinary group of leaders in these labs. 8,000 candidates applied, only 180 were selected. They speak for themselves in a moment when they present to you some of their work. But since March, when many countries began to prepare to respond and recover, we clearly saw that one area was central to the capacity to respond. Digital acceleration has suddenly come into its own. The surge in teleschooling, teleworking, telemedicine, and digital payments during the COVID-19 crisis are just the tip of an iceberg that is truly signaling digital transformation. Over 40 governments have requested UNDP's support in keeping their public services going since the pandemic began, including the Maldives, Brazil, Sudan. On digital finance, UNDP, the UN Capital Development Fund, the World Bank, the International Organization on Migration have been working together to improve remittance flows. In total, and this is just the first assessment that we have tried to undertake, UNDP has been part of developing 181 digital responses in 60 countries in a matter of weeks. And in May, for example, UNDP India, and I'm very pleased to see Shoko also there, our resident representative, and our partners created a fact-checking game to combat COVID-19 myths. And its use is now being adapted for also further application in Timor-Leste, in Cabo Verde, Kuwait, and Morocco. And it speaks to one of the interesting features of these accelerator labs. They have created a horizontal platform that allows almost instant communication and sharing of ideas, tapping and sourcing new opportunities, technologies, and solutions that ultimately can also inform policymaking. During the panel to follow, I also look forward to hearing the lessons learned by the Qatar Fund for Development, the Qatar Smart Program, and the Qatar Incubation Center about their experience using agile innovation to adapt to the new realities related to the pandemic. They have been great and close partners to the Accelerator Labs. A second area where we clearly need to redouble our efforts is to diversify how we get data. Nothing has been more frustrating, nothing has been more paralyzing than the challenge of governments in the midst of an economic freefall and a social crisis to be able to identify who are the most vulnerable, who are most at risk, how can we find them, how can we test, track, and monitor, but also how can we, for example, establish temporary basic incomes, cash transfers, and be able to reach those who are most in need. When things are evolving quickly, real-time sources of data become essential. Through our lab network, UNDP is now tapping into diversified and new data in already more than 50 countries. We are learning every day, and we are learning fast. And we are using sensors to track agricultural projects, exploring satellite data to monitor air pollution, and tapping into mobile money transaction data to understand the resilience of small businesses during the pandemic, for example, to get real-time data to decision makers when they need it. Today, I'm also looking forward to hearing from India's Ministry of Science and Technology, how they navigate complexity thanks to cutting-edge insights and future-proof policy advice. The third lesson is that we have seen firsthand the value of bottom-up solutions, smart intelligence sourced within the communities and the national boundaries of countries. One needs to look no further than the supply chain failures of the first few months that have emerged within this public health crisis to reaffirm the value of local solutions and the rapid capacity to adjust and adapt. We have all seen the diversity and creativity of masks being produced by households and other small-scale producers. UNDP, in fact, has tapped into this collective power by working with labs to use 3D printer technologies to produce masks in Africa. And we're also activating peer solidarity networks in Latin America and connecting informal wood vendors to e-commerce platforms in other parts of the world, just as we are also establishing platforms such as in Uganda, connecting market traders with consumers and allowing essentially a new platform to connect them in an otherwise economically paralyzing situation. Harnessing the value of bottom-up solutions will be critical for governments managing the pandemic. This is calling upon governments to step up and step in. But at the end of the day, it is not government's capacity alone that will determine our ability to respond and to ultimately bounce back economically in the months and years to come. And today I'm also looking forward to hearing from UNDP Zimbabwe on how they are exploring the power of informal markets to ensure food supply chains. Another very concrete example that has taken on dramatic and immediate relevance. Colleagues, In the first year of operation, the UNDP Accelerator Labs network was not only something that entered into a new arena of development practice, it also attracted a great deal of attention from many others who are looking to innovation as a driver for better development solutions and pathways. And I'm very pleased to note that it took less than a year for international recognition of the Accelerator Labs network, its approach, its infrastructure, and its engagement strategy to be recognized. For example, the Public Service Team of the Year award by Apolitical due to the network's contribution to evidence-based policy. And perhaps most surprising, but also reassuring, the capacity to innovate at scale, also the notion that these labs are not just labs in isolation, but are embedded in UNDP embedded in the partnerships at the country level, has been recognized in an article just published in the MIT Sloan Management Review, which looked at UNDP and asks businesses, maybe surprising, to learn from a UN organization. This is unusual, and MIT sees lessons in our approach. They call it a network of ecosystems and are excited about the way that UNDP taps into the power of wider and richer sources of innovations by exploring the inventions of the women and men closest to poverty, the impacts of climate change, and most recently, this global pandemic. Agility, diversity, and tapping into the power of grassroots solutions, but not grassroots in the sense that we often associate with the term grassroots. Grassroots solutions are neither simplistic, nor do they only compel because of their simplicity. They're often products of a sophisticated realism that guides people in finding solutions within the constraints that they face, not in an idealized world, if only we had everything at our disposal. It is this ingenuity that we continue to draw on as we also have put forward our next offer in response to COVID-19, an offer of service and support to countries that looks beyond recovery towards 2030, does not lose sight of the Sustainable Development Goals as our compass, and realizes that we have to invest now in order to even have a hope to emerge out of this deep, dark moment that so many countries are going through. And I hope that today's discussion demonstrates what we mean by a next generation UNDP. It's not an overnight exercise. You do not reinvent an organization. You do not change paradigms just by declaring it and by writing policy guidance. It is by learning, by doing, but also by introducing agility, the responsibility to go to scale and to have a sense of relevance that will drive this at speed and scale. It is thus my personal great pleasure and perhaps the greatest affirmation of the success that the labs have already found also in the response of our own country teams. Not all were initially convinced that these accelerator labs would be really something that they could graft on and integrate immediately. But it took less than a year for most of our country teams to request that they be included in the next batch of accelerator labs. So today, I'm pleased to announce that we are actually proceeding with the establishment of 30 additional accelerator labs in 30 countries. And since they sometimes cover multiple countries, we will cover virtually all of UNDP's country teams in 130 countries, at least in terms of the network of accelerator labs. And they will make the services available to 70% of the least developed countries and low-income countries, and over 70% of small island development states will also be represented in this total cohort. This is the investment with a poverty lens, but also with a strong development focus that UNDP brings to this. Allow me to conclude these remarks by once again thanking the Qatar Fund for Development and the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development. You took an unusual step, and I know that Marie Flassbart at the launch last year in New York said, you know, we don't normally do things like this. And I want to thank you because it took trust, it took confidence, but it also embraced the notion that development funding and development partnerships and cooperation need to evolve the instruments. We need to be greater risk takers, not in a blind sense, not in a naive sense, but actually to embrace the complexity and challenge of the task at hand. And I want to thank both of you and through you, your governments for having had that confidence in UNDP. I think everything we have seen in the last 12 to 15 months hopefully reaffirms your initial judgment and instinct in this. And let me also recognize that, you know, in taking this forward, we benefited from many. Italy and Japan are also joining and supporting aspects of the Accelerator Labs network. And above all, there were many partners in other labs, in other networks across the world will help to inform and shape and guide us in setting up what is probably something that we said initially, and so far it seems to be true, the largest and fastest learning network on development in the world. Almost considered impossible to do in 1 year. We are here, and we are now moving from 60 to over 90 countries in which these labs will function. And with these remarks, let me also take this opportunity, because it may be the last chance I have, to thank Ambassador Hoshino. Hoshino-san, who has been a great companion for us here in New York, I know has been also central to interesting Japan in this Accelerator Lab network, in the work of UNDP. And Hoshino-san, I wish you all the best as you escape the constrictions of multilateralism, and the freedom of university awaits you in Osaka. Arigatou gozaimasu. Thank you to all of you. It's been a great pleasure to join you for this event today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Administrator Steiner, for these reflections and lessons learned. And thank you as well to our founding investors in Germany and Qatar for this call to action. Let's dig now a little bit into the details of how labs work and what all of these things mean. I'm thrilled to introduce to you our panel. Our panel discussion will focus on local innovations to accelerate progress towards the 2030 agenda. So our panelists today are Ms. Shoko Noda, the resident representative of UNDP India, Dr. Purushottam Hanumatu, Chairman and Managing Director of the National Research Development Corporation of the Ministry of Science and Technology in the Government of India, Mr. Omar Shath, Project Specialist from the Qatar SMART Program, Ms. Nouf Al-Kabi, Development Analyst at the Qatar Fund for Development, Mr. Hamad Al-Khatani, Small and Medium Enterprise Incubation and Acceleration Manager and General Manager for the Qatar Business Incubation Center, and Ms. Charlene Moyo, Head of Solutions Mapping, UNDP Zimbabwe. So many thanks to our panel. As we hear these varying experiences, let us focus on finding patterns across multiple experiences that focus on 3 questions. First, what value does bottom-up innovation add to sustainable development, especially as we aim to respond to and recover from the legacy of this pandemic? Secondly, as our administrator said, what does agile look like in action, and especially when you're being agile at scale? And thirdly, how do we ensure that the innovations we invest in today are helping us build back better after the pandemic? So these are our 3 questions to plant in the back of your mind as we take this journey. Our first stop will be India. So let us go to you, Shoko. We hear that at UNDP India, you've been combining the power of local solutions with cutting-edge innovations, and your focus has been driving a green economic recovery from the pandemic. Tell us more about this.
Yes, thank you very much. Mr. Deputy Director General for Planning of Qatar Fund for Development, Your Excellency Parliamentary State Secretary of the Federal Ministry of Economic Cooperation and Development of Germany, and Mr. Achim Steiner, our dear UNDP Administrator, dear panelists, participants, good afternoon and good evening from Delhi. Thank you very much for giving India Accelerator Lab this opportunity to present our work. For me, it's been a very exciting journey with Accelerator Lab for the past 7-8 months since its launch. I've been with UNDP over 20 years, so maybe I'm becoming a bit of a dinosaur, but this lab initiative is quite revolutionary, I must say, in the way that we address the very fast-paced development challenges. It has made UNDP much more agile to be ahead of the curve. The lab is spurring innovation within UNDP to start with, but also beyond UNDP, bringing together both the long-standing and new and unconventional partners from the government side, CSOs, private sector, and development partners. So here's India's story. Maybe next, yes. So globally, the Accelerator Lab has 3 tiers of strategies. They are policy, institution, and technology. At the policy level, we are scaling up innovation to impact law and policy. At the institutional level, we are scaling deep to impact culture within the organization. And at the technology level, we are scaling out meaning reaching out to the larger mass. At the policy level, the lab is working very closely with a national think tank called Niti Aayog, the Finance Commission, and the Ministry of Science and Technology to jointly advocate for reviving the District Innovation Fund to promote innovation at grassroots in more than 700 districts in India. And at the institutional level, where we scale deep and impact the culture within the organization, we're working to foster culture of innovation within the central and the state governments. For example, in Telangana, which is a state in southern India, together with CSO called Grassroots Innovation Augmentation Network, we are setting up a grassroots innovation cell anchored within the state government innovation ecosystem. So it's a first of its kind in India, and we are very proud of it. At technology level, of course, we are leveraging the power of new and emerging technologies such as blockchain, artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, for addressing complex, fast evolving, and pressing development challenges. Our first example is how we are tackling the air pollution. You probably all know that air pollution is a very pressing and concerning development challenge in India. Accelerator Lab is developing artificial intelligence platform using geospatial data to help the regulators monitor air pollution from over 36,000 brick factories in northern India. Then coming to blockchain, maybe next slide, please. Yes, thank you. So this is also the technology side. We are starting a very exciting initiative to build a national blockchain platform for Indian spices. And this will also address a more inclusive green recovery post-COVID. India is, you can imagine, the largest producer of the spices in the world, with export value of $2.8 billion US every year. So one of the major challenges for small farmers is to get their due share of income because of difficulty in assuring transparency at every stage of the value chain. So we are using the blockchain. We're bringing blockchain, which is a decentralized process of recording transactions on open and shared electronic ledger, basically. So this means that real-time data about each transaction will be provided to all stakeholders at every stage of the value chain. We are partnering with farmer producer organizations, Indian Institute of Technology, Spices Board, and the Ministry of Commerce. And this robust platform can be scaled up across regions. All this will also lead to ensuring the quality of agricultural export commodities, and also leading to doubling the income of small farmers, which is a national policy in India. And lastly, coming to the COVID response, I had another slide. Please move. Next slide, please. Yes. Well, Akim, you have already mentioned, so I hope that means it's already a successful example of A-Lab work. This is to demystify COVID and spread awareness. So we designed these games called Corona Champion through a pro bono partnership with a non-profit organization called IPE Global Center for Knowledge and Development. So it's been played more than 10,000 times in India alone, and user engagement is as high as some of the best commercial digital games. It has drawn traction from the Accelerator Lab network, including Morocco, Cape Verde, and Timor-Leste. So now the game is available in 5 international and 7 Indian regional languages, including English, Arabic, French, and Portuguese. So colleagues, please try this out. This is, the picture is from Timor-Leste, not in India. They launched the game with the minister, and it's just an excellent example of scaling out across countries. And it also shows that Accelerator Lab network is truly the largest and fastest learning network globally. Lastly, what is amazing about A-Lab is that it's staffed by just three colleagues. with some seed funding, but not the millions of dollars attached to each country. But colleagues, they are full of unique and new ideas and expertise which are not available in UNDP before, extremely motivated and reach out to non-conventional partners. So it's absolutely fun. Like the music that we heard before the meeting, it's really absolutely fun to work with with them. So a big also congratulations to my Accelerator Lab team. So now I'd like to invite our government counterpart, Dr. Prushnam, the chairperson and managing director, National Research Development Corporation, under the Ministry of Science and Technology, to share your perspective on the work of our Accelerator. Over to you.
Dr. Purushottam, if you can unmute yourself.
Thank you very much, Ms. Shoko, and greetings to Mr. Ashim, Ms. Maria, Ms. Khalifa, and all the distinguished panel members and participants. My organization, the National Research Development Corporation, is one of the largest and oldest organizations under Ministry of Science and Technology, Government of India, and works with the National Innovation System to promote innovations, intellectual property rights, entrepreneurship, and startups. It has been my pleasure to have been associated with the Indian Accelerator Lab team right from their inception, when they hosted a very innovative launch event, Date for Development, a matchmaking platform to connect innovators with mentors. Ever since, we have collaborated with UNDP Accelerator Lab at multiple levels. NRDC was also part of the jury for the National Innovation Challenge that UNDP's Youth Co Lab organized with Atal Innovation Mission of Niti Aayog, the national think tank of Government of India. The Corona Champion Game, again, is a very innovative idea. Game, it was designed by Accelerator Lab India, was also disseminated through using our platform. And we are very happy to be associated with its dissemination, which has been visited by more than 10,000 people. India has a vibrant innovation ecosystem of hundreds of startup incubators, scientific and industrial research labs, and private sector accelerators. UNDP's Accelerator Lab is playing a very unique role to bring about systemic change. I see the lab is leveraging existing innovation ecosystem to solve complex development problems in India, like air pollution and climate resilient agriculture. One of the Accelerator Lab's initiative that is very close to my heart is the National Blockchain Platform for Agriculture. This platform can benefit the small farmers tremendously and boost rural economy. It can have multiple benefits in terms of strengthening livelihoods of farmers, have multiple benefits in terms of strengthening livelihoods of farmers by increasing their incomes and ensuring quality of their commodities throughout the supply chain. This technology platform can be instrumental to build back better in the post-COVID recovery stage. Government of India will be keen to support all the UNDP initiatives in scaling up this blockchain platform, particularly through its nodal agencies like National Research Development Corporation, Agricultural Products Export Development Authority, as well as Indian Council of Agriculture Research. The state governments in India will also work closely with UNDP teams in rolling out this blockchain initiative and support the enrollment of farmers, exporters, and spice processing units to this platform. I am also delighted that the Accelerator Lab has played a critical role in establishing a grassroots innovation cell in the state of Telangana, as mentioned by Madam. This will go a long way in identifying and promoting social grassroots innovation in the state of Telangana. Based on this experience gained from this initiative, Government of India will be keen to scale this grassroots innovation model to several other states in the country. It is fascinating to see that the lab is focusing on cutting-edge technologies like blockchain, artificial intelligence, Internet of Things that were not tried at systems level in public sector initiatives in India earlier. These fourth industrial revolution technologies have tremendous potential to accelerate progress on SDGs when leveraged properly. Initiatives such as the National Blockchain Platform for spices and artificial intelligence-based air pollution monitoring system for brick kilns are of strategic importance to India. Government of India, through its nodal institutions, will work closely with the Accelerator Lab in scaling these solutions across the country for the benefit of the 1.3 billion Indians. The Government of India looks forward to working closely with UNDP's Accelerator Lab in India to identify and scale these innovations like the ones we are discussing today. India views the Accelerator Lab as a gateway for access to global best practices, knowledge, and experiences related to introducing scalable innovations. The Government of India highly values the access to this very dynamic and agile global knowledge network and is committed to be a partner in this incredible journey. Thank you all. Jai Hind. Namaskar.
Thank you so much, Dr. Purushottam and Resident Representative Noda for these reflections. I dare not even ask what time it is where you are.
Yeah, I'm at my home and it is
I think it's
11:20 in the night, no problem.
Okay. Well, it's a
Yeah.
good sign. You know, if you
Yes,
can wake up in the middle of the night and speak with such coherence and clarity and conviction, it's always a good sign. Thank you so much for this, and huge, it's very valuable reflection to know that even in such a vibrant ecosystem as India, you see the value of this UNDP Accelerator Lab. And also, there's no better place to talk about scale than India, of course. So great to see that that's on the horizon and that's on your thoughts and in your strategies. Thank you for that. Let us move now. We will move now to our colleagues from Doha, where it's late, but not as late. Let's go first to the Qatar Smart Program. Omar, you and your team have been actively making digital breakthroughs during the pandemic. Tell us how the Qatar Smart Program has been making Agile a reality. The floor is yours, Omar.
Thank you, Gina, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear guests. It's an honor to actually participate in the UNDP Accelerators Lab. So let me tell you how the Smart Qatar program has actually worked to aid in the pandemic in the country. And I would like to give you a quick overview of who we are. So the Smart Qatar program, yes. So the Smart Qatar program was launched in 2017 with the aim to harness technology and innovation to create sustainable smart services in the country. And we decided in the first period to focus on 5 priority sectors: transport, logistics, healthcare, environment, and sports. And we work closely with the government entities that represent each sector to support them with the digital transformation. For example, in healthcare, we work with the Ministry of Public Health. Next slide, please. Now, to understand the needs of the country, we actually took a human-centric approach and we developed personas, as you can see, that represent different segments of the Qatari society. And then we started analyzing their journeys in these sectors to understand what are the challenges and how can we create smart solutions to make their life easier. Next slide, please. And one specific solution is called the virtual consultation, which was designed for chronic patients because it was in high demand. However, as we were in the planning phase of the project, the pandemic hit, and we realized that the infrastructure cannot really cope with the high rate of patients because Qatar is one of the highest or has one of the highest rates when it comes to COVID-19. So we immediately re-engineered the scope to make sure that it's a virtual consultation for COVID patients. And it was well received by the people in Qatar, and the number of calls was high. People were able to actually call doctors and check up to make sure whether they actually it's actually COVID or it's just a normal flu. And then, as you can see, the number of recovery in Qatar is also very high. And today, I think the number of active cases is very less compared to when we started. So now back to the question of Gina is, how did we bring agile to reality? And we did two things as the Tasmo Smart Qatar program. The first one is we created an innovation lab. And the purpose of that lab is to bring researchers, entrepreneurs, subject matter experts to work together to address the challenges in the country. So TESMO works with the government entities across sectors to identify the challenges, and then we bring those innovators to do rapid development of solutions, and then we take them to the incubation, and lastly to scale implementation. So the other thing we did is, when it comes to actual implementation, we start with a POC, because the normal tendering cycle of such solutions in the government takes a long time. So we took a different approach of proof of concept. So any provider who wants to implement solutions, we ask them to actually put a solution at work as a POC. If it actually works, it's a win-win situation, because as a government, we make sure that, oh, this solution works and the people can benefit from it. But the provider also makes sure, oh, my solution actually works. And instead of going in a tendering cycle, we actually do a direct award. The last thing I want to conclude with is to actually grow the ICT sector and make sure that it is sustainable. The government does not retain the IP of such solutions, but we encourage enterprises of different sizes, from large to micro, to develop the solutions, retain the IP, so that they can take it to other entities and maybe to other countries. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Omar. This is really fascinating and amazing to see how, in a time of crisis, you've been able to innovate and take these proof of concepts to scale in Qatar. Huge thanks for sharing that. Let's move now to the Qatar Fund for Development. Noof, as we understand it, the Qatar Fund for Development has also been innovating during this period. How has the recent pandemic situation triggered a redesign in the way the Qatar Fund for Development advances economic empowerment? We'd love to hear from you on that.
Thank you, Gina. Your Excellencies, dear panelists and guests. To answer the question, the recent pandemic affected the small to medium enterprises. They were depending on the traditional ways of businesses. However, with the help of our partners, some projects were amended to fit the current situation and help those startups to transition to digitalizing and using innovative solutions to cope with the consequences of COVID-19. Therefore, I'll be viewing several projects that use innovative solutions pre and post the pandemic situation. Can you please go to the next slide? Starting with Zaytuna Temkeen, which is one of our partners in Tunisia. Our partnership tackles here the challenges that face small to medium enterprises, specifically farmers, and their access to markets. The economic empowerment approach here is focused on value chain financing. And with Zaytuna Temkeen and its ecosystem, here we'll partner with several key players, suppliers in the market, which will ensure the marketing and the distribution of the products and suppliers in the market. So that will ensure the marketing and distribution of the product produced by the small farmers to the final beneficiaries. Zaytuna here, Temkeen, will solidify the role of the financial partner by providing the small to medium enterprises with the production inputs required to produce the final goods. Can we move to the other slide, please? Moving to our partnership with Spark, which have been signed recently and included 30% of the total funding to support micro, small, and medium enterprises that are at risk of going bankrupt and that have a crucial role in battling the COVID-19 outbreak. The partnership will focus on providing support to the Syrian refugees in Turkey and Jordan and the host communities, in which they will be pushed to transfer to adjust to their context and to repurpose their products and services. Some of the services that will be provided are remote and online business advisory service to entrepreneurs, in which will provide support to repurpose their products and services. They're going to have them reskilling their staff and providing them on advices on digital transformation by addressing specific COVID-19 needs. This will be done with the help of local and international agencies such as POM. The second services that we're providing specifically for COVID-19 is the Micro, Small, and Medium Enterprises COVID-19 Credit Fund, which have been established to provide emergency grants and financial support, along with the online advisory services, specifically for the medium to small enterprises, like 100 medium and small enterprises that are currently producing goods and services that are in demand of COVID-19 response to help them scale up and repurpose their products. An example of those products are visual masks, other protective gears, hand sanitizers, and ventilators. Spark will also, in our partnership, we're going to provide online incubation and acceleration program. This will be done with the help of a local incubator in Turkey, in which e-competition for small to medium enterprises will be done in order to encourage them to develop new services or produce or products in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Also, an incubation services will be provided online in order to further support the development of the selected business plans and help those entrepreneurs to connect to the relevant partners in the market. Along with all the services that we're providing, there will be a survival guide for refugee business during COVID-19. The survival guide is basically have been developed for the refugees since they're facing various barriers to doing business in hosting nations, such as restrictive labor laws, inability to open bank accounts, and language barriers. The survival guide is available both in Arabic and English, and it's an open source for all small to medium enterprises that are struggling with the global pandemic. Basically, it will have the entrepreneur to know the impact level of the COVID-19 and the action plan based on each impact level. It will also have them on how to monitor and manage the remote working areas from home. They're going to provide them with marketing tools, helping them to reconsider their target customer, as COVID-19 has affected the way customers prioritize their needs. It will also have them it will also include financial plan template and other products that will help them to cope with the global pandemic. Can we move to the next slide, please? Moving to our final slide, which is Azera. Azera is a startup that had been funded by our initiative Intilaq in Tunisia. Basically, Intilaq is an integrated technology hub which offers technical and financial support to students, researchers, and entrepreneurs. It focuses in its investment on innovative startups and small to medium enterprises in the ICT ecosystem. Azera offers agriculture technology solutions that will enable farmers to switch from arbitrary management to a data-driven approach that optimizes performance and maximize profits. It offers three products and services. The first one is the Agri Manager, which is an end-to-end solution that enables farmers to manage and monitor the whole activity of their agriculture exploitation. There are several models under this product, such as advanced task planning model, stock management. It depends on the farmer's need. Our next product is Atlas, which is a field robot. It's a prototype which is able to perform all the tractor tasks by twinning many hitches. The robot will be self-driven with the possibility of remote control via smartphone or tablet. And with the help of a computer vision technology, the robot can also detect plant diseases and do harvest estimation. And in order to contribute to the national effort to fighting COVID-19, Azera adapted its Atlas prototype robot initially destined for agriculture usage to be able to spread disinfectants to sterilize streets in Tunisia. And this will finalize our presentation on how Qatar Fund for Development approach to innovation solution.
Thank you so much, Noof. This is fascinating stuff, and really exciting the way you frame the kind of scale up, match up, skill up. You've really tapped into the question that happens a lot in innovation. When there's a lot of energy and focus on creating new ideas, sometimes it's the next step that's actually the hardest one to go through. So your model is really advancing that work, and congratulations on that. Thank you for sharing it.
Thank you, Gina.
So let's move now to the Qatar Business Incubation Center. Hamad, You work closely with the private sector, with entrepreneurs, with startups in Qatar. How has the local business world adapted to the challenges posed by COVID-19 in Qatar? And what do you think the lessons learned on innovation are during this very unique time?
Well, I would like to thank you all for having me as part of this exciting program. We have all gone through fast change over the last couple of months, both on a personal and business level. It's important for us to come together and share our experiences and that of our businesses to identify the lessons we can learn as a community so we can face the future with confidence. As much as our personal lives have been impacted, global trade and commerce also faced new uncertainties, especially startups, which often run on lower cash flow and staff numbers. They have felt the impact of the global crisis. In Qatar, we have been met with similar challenges, but our experiences in self-sufficiency and our leadership's efforts in diversifying the local market helped ease the effects. We were lucky that much of Qatar's production of essential products and foodstuff has moved to local production over the last couple of years. Qatar launched a financial incentive package to support the private sector valued at 75 billion Qatari riyal, which is about 10% of the country's GDP. Especially the small and medium-sized businesses benefited from the financial assistance policies and programs, including tax exceptions and deductions on rent and utility payments. The government's COVID-19 National Response Guarantee Program also assisted the private sector in making short-term payments. Also, the local banks allowed late repayment of loan installments and interests of some sectors. Both in businesses and in academia, quick measures were taken to adapt to this new challenge. An impressive move to digital platforms took place, moving entire student populations and businesses online. We were able to come together and learn from one another to respond to the challenges of COVID-19 crisis through innovation and collaboration. Notably, Qatar Development Bank launched a digital platform, which is the Hackathon, to allow innovators to develop ideas that would help in dealing with different problems and challenges of the pandemic. Overall, we have taken a huge step forward in short amount of time. Now we know that technology, including online learning and e-commerce, will continue to shape our future. Can we move to the next slide, please? Yes. Qatar Business Incubation Center aims to empower entrepreneurs to bring their business ideas to life. As one of the largest specialized mixed-use business incubators in the Middle East and North Africa region, we work with committed entrepreneurs to start and grow companies by incubating, developing, connecting, and investing in them. Cubic is a division of Qatar Development Bank. We work with key entities in the country to develop startups as well as overall private sector in line with Qatar's national development goals. Amongst others, our specialized programs foster innovation and present exciting opportunities for startups to succeed in Qatar's business environment. One of the most important new trends is a bigger reliance on cooperation and innovation across all businesses. The challenges we are facing today include a breakdown in global supply chain and trade links, which impact the production and delivery of products and services. We have to rethink how to do business with reduced global travel and movement restrictions. The way we communicate has changed rapidly, and more than ever, we rely on technologies. These are important lessons for the future. Many businesses now realize the full potential of a move towards digital. The bottom-up innovation is another key trend of this time. Innovation and change must happen quickly, and everyone has to contribute their ideas to make it happen. Businesses now look for creativity in their employees to come up with new concepts for the future. As an example, a local organization such as Qatar Science and Technology Park launched open calls for local and international tech startups and entrepreneurs to submit their business solutions to resolve issues related to COVID-19. Another area of bottom-up innovation is the academic sector in Qatar. We see many new initiatives, student competitions, and programs in the digital space to keep students' connections and creative spirit alive during this time. Next slide, please. Of course, businesses and entrepreneurs that have worked with Cubic were also affected and had to rethink their business plan. Many of our startups are based in Qatar and do not rely on external supply and demand, which was fortunate in this situation. Still, this type of crisis brings new challenges. Business owners have to be both alert and adaptable. For example, businesses in the industrial area, which was put under a temporary lockdown, had to rework their entire transportation, delivery, and staffing logistics. One of the most important sources of support are Cubic's virtual programs, initiatives, and online coaching sessions that offer help to our past and current cohorts. For example, our digital investment readiness bootcamp aims to raise our incubatees' investment potential. The online seminars are packed, and group coaching sessions helped our entrepreneurs to search for solutions that can be applied to all startups. One of our specialized programs is the Lean Acceleration Program. It took on a key role during this crisis. It is designed to accelerate the growth of established and promising businesses that show significant potential. The third wave of the program coincided with the start of the crisis and had to be put on hold for a time. We took the decision to change its objective and to use the program to support operational startups and companies to adapt to the challenges of the coronavirus. We wanted to offer businesses good short-term options. The main goal was to survive through the reduced cost and new ways to find revenue. Today, we are proud that our efforts have paid off. About 30% of the startups managed to successfully pivot their business plan and benefit from the program. 60% of startups were able to live through hibernation. They are now ready for a relaunch once the market picks up. We encourage existing startups to develop new solutions and to rethink their business model. Looking ahead, we also help them to set new 2020 milestones. The focus was jump-starting their business models in third quarter. This is when we expect the country and the markets to gradually reopen. Many of them draw on a multiple intelligence model, exploring new opportunities through the knowledge of Cubic's business coaches and the knowledge exchange with other startups. Together, they were able to create more value for their customers, no matter which industry or branch of business they are in. A new trend we saw in some of the incubatees is to become active helpers in the local market, as they now supply many essential goods and equipment, such as medical supplies. For example, one of our successful incubatees is Al-Maha Medical. They quickly adapted to cover the market need for medical face masks, as after its expansion, they are set to reach a production of 17 million masks per month. Although all of this, we need to remember that startups are disruptors that find gaps in the market. They often create new paths, new products, and think in new spaces. We can't deny that COVID-19 crisis changed our lives, our connection, and our businesses. But innovative startups see opportunities in difficult times. The local market, just like the economy of the world, will need time to recover. But I'm confident that our response to the crisis and how young businesses found ways to adapt are a promising sign for the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hamad. This is the beginning of a bright look at how we may come out of what we know are devastating social and economic impacts of this pandemic, unprecedented in its scale. So thank you for sharing this with us, sort of the incredible pivot that you've seen in the startups you've incubated. That's an amazing rate of 30%. And thank you as well for sharing your model of multiple intelligences. We often at the Accelerator Labs talk about collective intelligence, where we try and tap into the brains of many people and sometimes machines and data to understand sustainable development as a rapidly evolving challenge. So we're also interested in learning more with you about that. Let's pivot now from Doha to Harare. I'd like to introduce Charlene Moyo, UNDP Zimbabwe's head of solutions mapping. So Charlene, from what I understand, you've been trying to understand how people are coping with the closures of mass food markets. Can you tell us about how you're tapping into innovations in the informal economy to ensure that the food supply chain stays intact?
Okay, thank you so much, Gina, for giving us this opportunity to present. I think maybe one of the things that I would like to do is just to give a background in terms of what it is that we have been doing as the Accelerator Lab. When we joined as the Zim Accelerator Lab, we were tasked to try and understand the informal economy. And if most people have been following our blogs, our focus was actually on trying to help vendors, as in trying to find solutions that help vendors in terms of the challenges they face when trying to, sell their goods and also make a living. So with that, most people are trying to figure out, Charlene, how did you find yourself moving from solving problems for vendors to trying to figure out how to make a food supply chain work? What actually happened was COVID-19. COVID-19 happened. And what happened with COVID-19 is that the markets where these vendors were actually selling their wares, whether it was clothes, food, green markets, they all got shut down. And that's where most vendors in Zimbabwe actually work. So what then happened was, because we had a relationship with them through the solution mapping processes we had last year, they actually came to us and said, what are you guys doing? Because you are working with us. You know, this is where we get our bread and butter, but now we can't sell. So we thought, okay, if this is the situation, why not just start to figure out how to, upgrade the markets or, make these markets COVID compliant. So we started thinking along those lines. But then now, when we were in the process of doing that, we actually started asking ourselves, is it the place where these vendors are selling that generates money for them? Or is it the product that they're actually selling? So with us thinking about that, we were like, where do these people get their food from, for example? Where do these people get the wares that they sell? So what we've had was an aha moment as the Zim Accelerator Lab team, in that, for example, if we want these vendors to continue to provide a service of selling food within urban centers, we have to think about the rural-urban linkage, because that's where they get this food from. So from that process, that's where we started asking ourselves, where can we find solutions, or where can we find people who are in this space, who are connecting the vendor who's trying to sell whatever it is that they can at that time, and where people are getting their food from, for example, which is the farmer. So during our solution mapping process within the COVID-19 situation, we managed to identify one social enterprise called Knowledge Transfer Africa. Knowledge Transfer Africa is a social enterprise that consists of a team of about 30 people who have informants within markets who assist with, firstly, market aggregation, as in the understanding of how foods are actually moving from farms to markets. And the second thing, in terms of market pricing for food that's being sold. And then the last thing was, they also have a relationship with vendors who sell within these markets. The challenge we realized, I mean, we found this brilliant social enterprise, and we were like, okay, let's plug in with these guys and see what it is that they can do. Because we felt, in terms of them being grassroots, they were the most viable solution we had, connecting with a lot of people within the informal sector, looking at the side of the farmer as the smallholder farmer, and also the side of the vendors. The challenge that we noticed when we were actually thinking of engaging them was, they were doing all of this manually. Knowledge Transfer Africa has been collecting market information for 8 years manually. So what we thought was, why not invest in them, upgrade their tech, and find a way to use this platform to make them do exactly what they used to do: connecting farmers to markets, connecting vendors to markets, assisting them to understand where it is that they're actually supposed to drop off food, pick it up, and also to see whether we can aggregate the way in which food is moved or sold within cities. So that's the process where we found ourselves. So now what we are now doing is, in the process of all of this going on with COVID, we are building back markets better, so that they have the proper wash facilities that they did not have, restructuring the places where people sell, so that there are, should I say, the 1 meter distance, for example, is respected. So we are doing two things, in that we, as the Accelerator Lab, in the experimentation process that we've gone through, are trying to protect the livelihoods of vendors and smallholder farmers, and also their health, by capacitating a solution that we found through Knowledge Transfer Africa, who have, over the past 8 years, been managing the food supply chain. What we are now doing by investing in this platform, or the social enterprise, is that we can now get information in real time. And I think that's something that's very important within the COVID-19 response that we have, that real-time information saves lives and also saves livelihoods. So that's the journey that we've actually had. And we hope that as we move forward, this is something that we can see getting bigger. Our intention at first, when we started, was where it was supposed to have been an experiment that was supposed to be run in Harare, looking at farmers closer to Harare itself. But there was so much interest in this solution that the Ministry of Agriculture asked us to expand it, in terms of our thinking, to 3 cities. So now what's actually happened is that there's a sort of acceleration because of the need and the problems that we're trying to solve under COVID-19. So a lot of agencies are also jumping in to make sure that one day, or probably next year, I hope, we can go further and scale up this solution to service the nation. So that's my presentation. Thank you, Gina.
Thank you so much, Charlene. It's really exciting to hear about what you're doing. I mean, we've, from the global level, we observe the work going on in Zimbabwe, and we find it fascinating. And it's a great example of this bottom-up innovation, because so much of the Zimbabwean economy is the informal economy. So combining this approach where you map solutions of women and men who are living closest to the problem, together with this idea of really learning from the vibrancy of this informal economy, is fascinating, and I think very powerful on the global scale in terms of research and development. So thank you for that. let us now open up for some of the questions that we have from the audience. We have about 300 people online at the moment, so we certainly won't get to all the questions, but we do want to hear from you. Before we do, may I briefly ask Deputy Permanent Representative of the Permanent Mission of Japan, Dr. Toshio Hoshino, to take the floor. Deputy Permanent Representative Hoshino, what do you think of what you've heard today? Can you share with us some thoughts?
Thank you, Gina. Let me first congratulate UNDP on the very impressive first-year achievement of the Accelerator Lab network. And thank you, Qatar and Germany, for hosting, and moreover, for accelerating this entire process of important initiative. And all the panelists, your inputs are magnificent. That's all stimulating. In the time of COVID-19 pandemic, we are all aware that we need to move things quickly, employ all sorts of measures, particularly innovative solutions to mitigate and contain the crisis, that's particularly locally. So ever since I was a co-chair of the SDI Forum 2 years ago, I have been advocating the idea of SDI for SDGs passionately. And that is the effective use of innovative ideas and technologies in advancing and accelerating the efforts towards achieving the SDGs. So we believe that this A-Labs and all the examples I hear today is not just timely enterprise, but also an important gateway. Hatem said also, Hamad talked about that, important gateway for us to engage private sectors more and mobilize their enterprise expertise and resources. I'd like to point out also that we strongly share the A-Lab's emphasis on local ownership. The sustainable development is not realized automatically, but becomes only sustainable when it is led by the local ownership, and international partnership is a key to enhancing their human development on one hand and ensuring their human security on the other hand. These are the two mutually complementary human-centered policy directions. One is for the people to help seize the opportunities to grow and progress, and the other is for the people to be protected, empowered, and recovered better when they're in trouble or left behind, or at the risk of being left behind in highly unusual, vulnerable, undesired situations. After hearing today's webinar and all the examples the panelists introduced, I have a full expectation to the role of A-Labs as they provide unique solutions, local solutions in a speedy way, both for human development and human security of the real people on the ground. Japan, in this case, is looking forward to collaborating with the A-Lab network in a proper and effective way. And lastly, Gina, I'd like to say thank you to the Minister Steiner for his warm words. That was a surprise. While I depart the Japan mission to go back to academia, my commitment to promote Japan-UNDP partnership to make the world better remains strong, and I personally look forward to continuing working closely with UNDP and A-Lab also, even with my different capacity. Thank you very much for the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, and good luck in your next adventure. It's very exciting. Thank you for this. So let's take some questions from the floor. Let's start off with a question for the India Accelerator Lab team. This is a question from Alex Kleidrink. Many thanks for the great input so far. What has been the greatest internal novelty or innovation for UNDP India, i.e. how the country team conducts its activities? So I'm going to throw that at Sweta Kolari, the head of experimentation for UNDP India.
Thanks a lot, Gina. Thanks a lot for a wonderful question. So the internal novelty for the UNDP India has been, in the innovation space, has been working very closely with the grassroots innovations, like, innovations that are done by farmers in terms of best practices that they continuously experiment with, as well as the cutting edge technologies, be it blockchain or artificial intelligence or IoT, that are also bringing about change in the digital farming sector at a systemic level. So this, the working at the two different extremes of the spectrum is very interesting for us. Thank you.
Thanks so much. So let us now take another question here from Mariam Tarakvelidze. Apologies for the pronunciation. This is a great question, and it's actually to all panelists. The question is, how do you evaluate the impact of your projects? And what extent do you have interaction with the end users? So let's start here, if we can, with our colleagues in Doha. Hamad, would you like to, do you have any thoughts on this? So the question is, how do you evaluate the success of your work, and do you have interaction with the end user? So Hamad or Omar or Nouf, jump in here in case you'd like to answer this question.
Thank you, Gina. So I can speak about our projects in TESMO. I mean, we have set KPIs in each sector. So for healthcare, the virtual consultation contributes to the access to healthcare within 10 minutes. Now, this is the objective that, one of the objectives we try to achieve within the healthcare, but even at a project level, we set specific KPIs to see to what extent it does contribute to that. And one of the metrics we measure in the virtual consultation is the number of users, because it's an end user solution. So we measure how many users are actually using it. And since the pandemic, I don't have the statistics, but I know that it's been heavily used because it's the hotline for the COVID. And that was done in collaboration with the Ministry of Public Health. One maybe a side note worth noting is that we have seen high demand for maybe the call, but still the end users are not comfortable sharing or actually talking through video. So many of them opt for call only without video. That's just an observation that I wanted to share. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Omar. Nouf, did you want to come in on this as well? How do you measure your success?
Yeah, thank you, Gina, for the question. From a donor perspective, we do measure our success a little bit different. We do set KPIs and objective with our implementer partners. However, in reaching to the final beneficiaries, we do with the help of our partners, but we don't get in contact with them directly. It will be through our partners, implementing partners, unless there are channels to help us to get in contact with them.
Yes, can I jump in here?
Please do, please do.
I tried to unmute, but it did not work. Yeah, so the way we evaluate our projects, we first of all, our main aim is to support the entrepreneurs and the startups. And of course, as my colleagues mentioned, we set KPIs and goals. But our main objective would be to engage the whole ecosystem. We want engagements from other big players within the same ecosystem to help reach the goals that we want. Especially us being an incubation center, we are more of the operational hand that actually runs these programs and try to come up with the goals that were preset for it.
Excellent, thank you, Hamad. I know from the Accelerator Lab side, we've struggled with this question, how to evaluate success, because it's an extraordinarily fast-paced and decentralized network of labs. We look at three things. We look at how much are we diversifying, how we understand problems and solutions. We look at how much are we impacting decision makers with the insights and methods that come from the labs. And thirdly, how much kind of take up do we see of the ways of working of the labs outside UNDP, within UNDP and outside UNDP. So this is sort of, the quick manager's guide to what a successful lab is for us. I want to shift here to a question for Charlene. This is a question from Rajat Khawas at generation.org. Are there cooperatives for agricultural produce, farmer cooperative or associations? Aggregating farmers on a platform may be very useful. India has attempted to do that and would be good to learn on that. Charlene, any thoughts on that?
Yes, I think in Zimbabwe we're very lucky in terms of the fact that there are several farmers unions that we have. We have the Zimbabwe Farmers Union, the Commercial Farmers Union, and also one for, I think, the Young Farmers Union. So when we did our issue mapping process, they were actually one of, should I say, the groups that we invited, along with the other side, which was the vendor associations and the transport associations, to try and understand better how to work with the Knowledge Transfer Africa social enterprise in terms of how to coordinate each other. For us, I think in terms of the coming together of farmers, it was assisted by the Ministry of Agriculture. They're the ones who assist in some of these processes, and we've already found these unions there. So I think it became easier for us in terms of engaging and planning moving forward with regards to how to aggregate, because right now what's happening is that the Ministry of Agriculture has agricultural officers who engage these farmers' unions to let them know where their farmers are supposed to take their produce. So we are lucky in terms of having support from the Ministry of Agriculture. Thank you.
Fantastic. It's a very, I think probably the more you map the system, the more complex you understand it to be, and vibrant, and with lots of nodes and connections that we can't anticipate from the start. Let's take a question here from El Haji Ba. How might we help government in low-income countries, like my country in Senegal, to integrate innovation in their daily work? This is a great question, very practical to close out our panel on. If we, Dr. Purushottam, if you are still here with us, I know it's late, let me just see, are you still with us? Yes, as you're sitting in government, what kind of advice would you give to a colleague in Senegal who wants to integrate innovation into government work in Senegal?
You see, government is the biggest consumer of innovations. In all their programs, unless they adopt innovation, they cannot reach out. So in that sense, government is the biggest consumer or buyer of innovations, and it can easily be integrated because they are the major driving force. They have the authority, they have the power to integrate these innovations. But only thing is, we need to educate the policy makers the kind of impact the innovation can bring in, the kind of benefits they can bring in. For example, in India, we have several innovations which have been implemented to help the farmers. We have called a JAM, that is what? Janadhan Yojana. Every farmer, every citizen, particularly in a village, they have been opened an account. They have been given a Aadhaar number, which is like a identification number of all the farmers, all the people in the country. Similarly, all the cash transfers to the below poverty line is being transferred to direct benefit transfer. This scheme has been launched by government. So whatever benefits are given to the farmers and people who are below the poverty line are being implemented, are being transferred by adopting digital transformation technologies. So India has achieved a great significant milestones in bringing these innovations to the rural people and the poor people and at the village level. This is my...
Fantastic. Thank you, Doctor. Thank you so much. So we do have a lot of questions remaining in the Q&A function, and a lot of these are about specific partnerships where different organizations are asking us to work with them. What I would suggest is our team will look into these questions, and we'll get back to those colleagues who have expressed an interest in partnering with us. so that we can move forward. I would just now ask, let's do a lightning round across the panel. So 30-second answers only. Before we close this out, I will ask the administrator to share some final remarks with us if he is able to. So the lightning round question for all of the panelists is what are you most excited about this summer to accelerate sustainable development? What are you so most excited about this summer? So let us start with Shoko. What are you most excited about from where you sit?
I didn't think of it. What is more exciting? I'm personally excited about this blockchain work.
Fantastic, fantastic. That's definitely exciting. Okay, Dr. Purushottam, since I'll go in order of the panel, so we go that way. Dr. Purushottam, what are you most excited about?
Yeah, for me, you see, again, whatever the Accelerator Lab India is doing, it is exactly the vision of our Prime Minister Narendra Modi. You know, he integrates innovation in all his policy decisions. Whenever he takes a meetings with the scientific community and innovators, he will ask a first question, how your innovation is going to benefit the common man. So that is a kind of a fundamental cultural change is trying to bring in the society. And to promote innovation, he has launched several flagship programs like Startup India, Make in India, Digital India. So all these things are really very, very exciting. It provides a great opportunity to work with UNDP Accelerator labs to share the best practices and to improve the national development agenda of our country by leveraging all the best practices through UNDP India Lab.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you so much. Omar, what are you excited about?
Thank you, Gina. If you don't mind me, I would like to add a quick comment on the last Q&A raised, and then I will tell you what I'm passionate about. Because I also work in the government, in the Ministry of Transport and Communications, and I believe, yes, I do concur that the government is the biggest consumer of innovation, but I think also the government should publish and make the challenges or the demand transparent, because I'm sure that Senegal has so many innovators, but without knowing what to innovate for or about, it's going to be very challenging. Now, what I'm personally passionate about is the mega project that TESMO is undertaking, which is building a central technology infrastructure, because it's going to connect the government and the private sectors into a and this will be also a data sharing hub. We have been in contact with many startups, and we understand that data sharing is like the key to innovation. So that would definitely accelerate the innovation ecosystem in Qatar. Thank you.
Absolutely. And it's really key and actually harder than it would look, right? It seems like everyone's willing, but actually when you get down to protocols of data sharing, it's actually tricky. All right, Noof, what are you excited about?
Actually, what I'm excited about is to see how the people and the mindset of people have changed and will change after this pandemic. The culture have changed as well, and people are discovering new innovation solutions and ideas. I'm looking forward to the life after the pandemic, global pandemic, to know how we're going to cooperate with new projects and new ideas.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree. Hamad, what are you excited about?
I believe this year we have been exposed to many challenges on a personal and business level. At the same time, it gives the opportunity to rethink how we work and what we must change for the future. And I think that sustainable development is on everybody's mind now. So I think that I'm excited about how we are shifting towards the digital workspace, and how there will be collaboration across businesses and markets, and the exchange of ideas and innovations. We have seen what we can do facing this crisis together. But I think that although it's not a global pandemic, but I think that sustainable development is just as important for our survival for the future.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. These are wise words for us to think about. Then Charlene, last word goes to you. What are you excited about?
I'm excited about the Accelerator Lab. I think one of the greatest things I love about being a part of the Accelerator Lab family is every day is a new day. You don't know where it's going to take you, but it's exciting. So I think that's what I'm looking forward to, just learning new things every day, adapting, changing, experimenting, and just going with what's happening.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Some good optimism here on the panel during some tough days for many of us. So thank you for that. So before we close this out, Administrator Steiner, do you want to share any closing remarks with us? No obligation, just giving you the opportunity. May have lost him here. Great. All right. Well, I'd like to again thank the Qatar Fund for Development as our host for this event. If we were together in person, I'm sure we'd be having some lovely coffee or tea or refreshments, but try and imagine that virtually. I'd also like to thank the Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development of Germany for being an incredible partner in this effort. And thank you to the panel, to our teams in India and Zimbabwe and Qatar. This has been a fascinating conversation. Thank you to the whole audience. If we haven't answered your question, we will get back to you because we really do believe in working out loud and working in partnerships. Sometimes it drives us all a little bit crazy because we have so many opportunities, but we're excited about each and every one of them. So huge thanks. And huge thanks to the team behind the scenes here, the Global Accelerator Lab team that put this together. Thanks everyone and have a great rest of your day or evening.
Thank you so much, Gina.
Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Gina. Thank you, Gina. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Hosting
you.
it nicely.
Thank you very much.
Oh, we've got that nice music.
Thanks, Gina. Bye.
Bye.